What is love? This is one of life's biggest questions. We all yearn for opportunities to love and be loved. Love matters. You matter. Who and what you decide to love really matters. There's a great quote from Father Pedro Arrupe. It says, "What you're in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what will get you out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything." Who and what you decide to love is going to have an enormous impact on your life. So let's take a look at what love is and what it isn't. One of the most beautiful passages in the Bible is in the first letter of John, chapter 4, verses 7 through 21. From this passage, we get one of the most quoted phrases of all time. God is love. These three words are usually quoted on their own, but the whole verse reads, "Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love." If you read this carefully, you discover that God gives us a fabulous clue right here. John tells us that people who don't love don't know God. He implies that if they knew God, they would love, which tells us that getting to know God is the best way to learn how to love. So what does God teach us about love? The most quoted verse in the Bible is John chapter 3, verse 16. At baseball games and football games, you very often see someone holding up a sign that says John 3:16. That verse reads, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him may not perish, but may have eternal life." This is the love of God the Father. Then there is the love of the Son. What does Jesus teach us about love? The first thing Jesus teaches us about love is the position love has in the whole scheme of things. When he was asked, which is the greatest of the commandments, he replied, "You shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the greatest and the first of the commandments, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Love's the most important thing. Jesus also teaches us that the essence of love is self-donation. He said, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Jesus taught us further that love is not just words, but action. And he did this with his own life by laying down his life for us on the cross. He backs up his words with action. Jesus doesn't just talk about love, he models love for us. You see, love is selfless. Finally, Jesus gives us instruction about how we should love. He said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." Notice, Jesus didn't say, "This is my suggestion." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a commandment. He commands us to love one another in the same way that he loves us. That is, by laying down our lives for each other. But it's important to point out that he didn't lay down his life so that we could have more of our selfish desires and worldly pleasure. Jesus laid down his life so that we could have eternal life. In the same way, he wants us to lay down our lives for other people in ways that lead them to eternal life. You will come across many people in your life who want you to make sacrifices so that they can have more of their selfish desires and worldly pleasure, but that's not love. That's manipulation. God's vision of love is beautiful, it's selfless, and it's radical. By contrast, the world's vision of love places a disproportionate focus on physical pleasure and having fun. God's vision of love is others-focused and selfless. The world's vision of love is me-focused and selfish. More than anything, the world tells us that love is a feeling. God tells us that love is a choice. In my marriage, there are times when I feel overwhelmingly in love with my wife. But there are also times when I don't feel that way. It's when I don't have those fabulous feelings that I really prove my love for Maggie. It's in those moments when I don't have those fabulous feelings that I choose to love her. See, love is a choice, not a feeling. And love is a choice that proves itself with action. Feelings are fleeting, but love love lives on. Love rearranges our priorities. It shows us what really matters, and in the process, banishes selfishness. The world pretends that love is a mutual giving and taking, but that's not love. In love, there's no taking, just giving and receiving. There's a beautiful reflection by Bruce Barton called The Two Seas that beautifully illustrates this point. There are two seas in Palestine. One is fresh, and fish are in it. Splashes of green adorn its banks. Trees spread their branches over it and stretch out their thirsty roots to sip its healing waters. Along its shores, the children play, as children played when he was there. He loved it. He could look across its silver surface when he spoke his parables. And on rolling plain, not far away, he fed 5,000 people. The river Jordan makes this sea, with sparkling water from the hills. So it laughs in the sunshine, and men build their houses near to it, and birds their nests, and every kind of life is happier because it is there. The river Jordan flows on south into another sea. Here, there is no splash of fish, no fluttering leaf, no song of birds, no children's laughter. Travelers choose a different route, unless on urgent business. The air hangs heavy above its water, and neither man nor beast nor fowl will drink. What makes the mighty difference in these neighbor seas? Not the river Jordan. It empties the same good water into both, and not the soil in which they lie, and not the country about. This is the difference. The Sea of Galilee receives, but does not keep the Jordan. For every drop that flows into it, another drop flows out. The giving and the receiving, they go on in equal measure. The other sea, it's shrewder, hoarding its income jealously. It will not be tempted into any generous impulse. Every drop it gets, it keeps. The Sea of Galilee gives and lives. The other sea gives nothing. It is named the dead. There are two kinds of people in the world. There are two seas in Palestine. You and I, we can only love because God has loved us first, and He has loved us incredibly. Allow the love that flows to you from God to flow out of you to others, and you'll live a life uncommon, an incredible life, filled with dynamic relationships and the deep fulfillment that all men and women yearn for, but so few ever find. One thing will impact your relationships with other people more than anything else in life, and that is the way you respond to God's love. I began this segment with a quote from Father Arupe, but I left the first line off. Here's the full quote. Nothing is more practical than finding God, than falling in love in a quite absolute and final way. What you're in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what you get out of bed for in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything.